Hey guys, what's up? It's Emily. Welcome back to my channel. I'm at my parents' house, so it feels really weird to do this video in my parents' house. I don't know, I'm like getting shy. Yeah, welcome back to my channel. I make videos about books, lifestyle, travel, so be sure to subscribe if you want to stay up to date with what's going on. Today, I'm going to be going through 8 self-help books to kind of start 2023 with. I read a lot of self-help books in the past month or two, and I definitely, first of all, would not recommend reading more than one self-help book a month. I think it's a lot of information to digest. I find self-help books to be really interesting just from the standpoint of they really help you to view things through a different perspective and think about your life differently and think about the way you think differently. A lot of self-help books are really good for anxiety, depression, spirituality, changing your way of thinking about things to help serve you. All of these books that I'm about to go through do that in some way. They just kind of have different ways of looking at things, but ultimately that's their overall goal. I find a lot of times self-help books to be really overwhelming. I feel like as I read them, I have to take every single piece of information that's in every book and apply it to my life. I feel like that's just not the way to do it. I find that if after I read a self-help book, I just kind of meditate on 1 to 3 things I can take from it and apply it to my life day to day. So that's why I recommend to just read 1 self-help book per month, just because I think it's important to digest the material and really see how you can apply it to your life and meditate on that a little bit more. Yeah, I just think anything else other than 1 to 3 key takeaways from each book is just too overwhelming, and you can also always reread the book and then go back and do an additional 1 to 3 takeaways the second time you read it. But I just think anything else is just too much and unrealistic for your life. And even if you read a book and don't necessarily make a plan to apply anything you learned in that book to your life, it's gonna stick with you in some way, just because the nature of reading self-help books is to reorient the way that you're thinking about yourself and your life and your decisions and your relationships and all that stuff. So I just think it's good to read a self-help book every once in a while, because it makes you just think about things and take a step back and evaluate where you are and what's going on in your life. And I think that's really important, especially as you're entering a new year. I feel like my New Year's resolutions are really more like spiritual this year. They're less superficial. It's more really just reflecting on the way I want to be, who I want to be, how I want to do things. And so I think reading self-help books is a great way to ring in the new year and meditate on what you want for this year and what you want your resolutions to be. I find sometimes after reading a few self-help books in a row, like some of them actually will contradict each other. For example, in the book The Confidence Effect, they look at yourself as a brand, and they really look at the concept of self as a brand that you're presenting, and it's really linked to reputation in the workplace and how that's kind of linked to confidence. Whereas in the book The Untethered Soul, they think of self as this weird concept that doesn't really exist. So you'll see that as you read more and more self-help books in different contexts, they do kind of contradict each other. So I think it's important to go into every self-help book with an open mind, but also you can be a little critical and you can think, well, I don't know if that actually works for me, or does this way of thinking serve me, or how do I want to look at this, or I want to look at this idea in this context this way and in this context the other way. Like, it just really broaden your ways of thinking about things, because every book kind of looks at similar concepts in different ways. So that's interesting, and just kind of going in and being able to form your own opinion and perspective and feelings about it is something to just keep in mind as you read them. Let's just get right into it. So there's 8 of them that I think are really cool. The first book I want to talk about is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is a book that I have already recommended a lot. I love this book. I feel like in general, before I read this book, I do have pretty good habits. I'm good at making habits, and I'm good at not having too many bad habits. So this kind of just reinforced for me personally what I already know. If you're a person that just feels like you have bad habits, like you don't have routines, you're lacking structure, I think this is a really great book for you. One of the key takeaways I took from this book that I thought was really interesting was the this idea that if you do 1% every day, it's not going to feel like you're doing much of a difference, but over a year, that's 365%. For example, I have a habit that I practice my French every day on Duolingo, which I need to do today. I have like almost a 500-day streak on that, and every day I do it for like 5 or 10 minutes, but because I've been doing it for like over a year, I know so much French, and it's a small thing that I do every day that over time makes a really big difference. And I just thought that was a really cool concept. But it also just has a lot of really amazing ways to break habits and develop new good habits. So if that's something that you're looking to do in the new year, I definitely recommend this book. The second book is called Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel S.F. Heller. This book is about basically the 3 attachment styles. There's anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, and secure attachment style, and just how you were sort of raised in what attachment style and how that affects your relationships today. Even if you find yourself to be in a secure relationship, I don't think any one person is 100% securely attached in general or has 100% secure attachment within them. Like, I think we all get a little anxious attachment. Sometimes we all get a little avoidant attachment, and I think it's just good to kind of take stock and be aware of where you are on the spectrum and how that affects your relationships with people, not just romantic relationships, although that is kind of what the book goes more into, monogamous one-on-one romantic relationships, but I really think it could apply to any relationship that you have, friendship, relationships with your parents, siblings, like anything. If you find that you avoid getting close to people, or you get really anxious about whether or not people like you, or if you matter to people, I just think I felt more secure coming out of reading the book than I did going into it. So that was cool. I definitely recommend it. The next book is called Kitchen Table Wisdom. It's by Rachel Naomi Raymond. It's a collection of short stories. It's not the classic self-help book, but it's a collection of short stories that they're true stories about this woman. She's a cancer therapist, I think. She's just sharing all of these experiences she's had from people that she's been in therapy with and her own experiences, and they just kind of have really cool spiritual stories that give you perspective. I think it's a nice book if you want to just read a story a day over time and then just finish the book that way. It's just a really cool book that lets you in on the human experience and makes you feel a little less alone and gives you good perspective on your life. I just think it's a really special book. My friend Liam gave it to me. People say this book changes their life. It says it'll make you recognize your own life differently and help heal people around you. Definitely recommend. The next book is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a by Mark Manson. This book is really cool in terms of we live in this time period with all of this stuff just thrown at us all the time, telling us that we need to care about the way we look, that we need to care about how many friends we have, we need to care about how popular we are, we need to care about all of these kind of superficial things. And this book is kind of a wake-up call to say you should care, you should give a fuck about certain things, but it kind of guides you along to find the things that you should give a fuck about. It's also written kind of humorously, no nonsense, no BS. I really like the way that he wrote it. And something cool that I really liked about this book is people talk about just the art of positive thinking and how it's so helpful, and we also live in a world where we are kind of told that we need to pursue being this top few people that are super successful and have all of these things and are super famous and do all of these outstanding things with their lives. Most people live lives and don't really do anything that remarkable, and they're happy. So what's the deal with that? What do they value, and how do you get there and become okay with that? And that's something that's really important to me, sort of moving through day-to-day life and being happy and content with daily life and not feeling like I need to have this thing to be happy. It kind of just goes into that and allows you to meditate on what you value and why, and really makes you think about, well, maybe you value something that you shouldn't, and that's not actually serving you as an actor. That's a really important thing for me to think about, because it's really easy, I think, for people to get caught up in all these conversations about fame and who knows this person and who knows that person. At the end of the day, it's I just want to be an actor. That's what I give a fuck about. I think this book is great for literally any job that you have or career that you have, just kind of focusing on what's really important. The next book is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. This book is, I mean, it's a lot shorter than most books. It's like 170 something pages, I think, but it is so dense. Like, this is one of those books that you might want to read 3 or 4 times. There's so much in there. It kind of just talks about the pursuit of inner peace. The one critique I have about this book is I feel like it talks about unconditional happiness, this idea of unconditional happiness, that anything can happen to you and you can just keep being happy, basically. Or not even that that's necessarily a thing, but that's what we should strive towards. And I just don't actually know how I feel about that. I think that's a little toxic. Like, I'm an actor, I'm an artist. If I feel something, I like to feel it and then let it go. And I guess that's kind of what this talks about too. It's just there are certain ways, specifically the idea of unconditional happiness was spoken about, that just kind of made me go, this seems a little idealistic for me. But other than that, I think that this book is so good, especially if you have anxiety, depression, if you feel like your thoughts kind of control you, which I think they do for all of us. It's just a way to kind of observe your thoughts and be at peace with them, or just kind of like observe your thoughts and see them and like not be as reactive or not let them close your heart. It talks about the idea of closing your heart and opening your heart, and yeah, it's just a very spiritual book, and I really, really loved it. And if you find yourself in a lot of conflict with people around you, like, I feel like this is a really good book to read. If you often feel like just everything just happens bad to me, like, this is a good book to read. I feel like it just allows you to get to that like Zen place. But yeah, it's definitely a dense book. Highly recommend it. Okay, the next book is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I find that our generation, my generation, doesn't really know that much about money, like home economics and stuff, and like how to invest and what to do when you start making money, or what to do when you're not making enough money, or how to save, any of that. Like, I just feel like unless you have family that teaches you that, a lot of people don't really have the resources to think about money as a tool rather than this scary thing that you don't have enough of, or that you make a lot of and then it just goes away because you spend it all. And I mean, it's literally called Lessons on Wealth, Greed, and Happiness. So money in relation to all 3 of those things. And it does talk about how money and people who are kind of good with money throughout their lives, it's more of a psychological thing than literally anything else. Like, it opens with this story about this blue-collar worker who had 2 jobs. He was a janitor. One of his jobs was a janitor. I forget what the other one was. But he died in his like late 90s, and he had $8 million to leave to his family just because he was good with money and like didn't take a lot of risks with investment and saved throughout his life. So I mean, I've always been frugal, but it just kind of made me think more about how money is used as a tool and how I want to use it. Talked about the difference between being rich and being wealthy, and how it's difficult because we spend a lot more money today, adjusted for inflation, than people did like in the 50s, for example. There's just more things to spend money on, and just thinking about what do you really need and what do you not need. And when you start making more money, not to immediately increase your lifestyle just because you've started making more money. Like, if you start making more money, you really shouldn't do that much differently with your lifestyle. It just made me think about my relationship to, in general, again, what I value and what's worth spending money on and what's not worth spending money on. And that's actually more of a psychological thing and more of a spiritual thing in a way. Yeah, I think it's a great book for everyone to read, just because I do think we're just thrown all of this stuff every day. Spend money on this, spend money on that, spend money on that. And like, people are just fairly used to spending money in my generation and don't really think about it as much as I think we should. I definitely recommend this book. Okay, the next book is The Confidence Effect by Grace Kalela by Grace Kalela, I think. I'm sorry if I butchered that. This book was an interesting read for me. It was really through the lens of how to be a successful woman within a company, like kind of within like a corporate setting. I mean, there were other smaller stories, like more like supportive stories throughout that were not in a business setting, but it dealt a lot with corporate America and like being a woman in corporate America and how to be confident within that world. I'm very much a believer as a person of like playing by the rules long enough so that you can then break the rules. I don't necessarily believe in a adhering to cultural norms or gender norms or whatever for the extent farther than I need to get what I want, if that makes sense. I think you do have to play by the rules a little bit in the beginning of your life just to get yourself kind of like into the game, and then you can start breaking the rules. This book was a little too much like how to follow the rules for your whole life and kind of like how to be a woman in a man's world. And I am a little more interested in, yes, how to do that, but then also how to like create our own way of doing things and our own idea of confidence as women, which it kind of goes into. I just kind of wanted more of that side of it. Like there was just a lot of how to do it within the confines of what we're presented. And you know, I started my own business. Like I don't really work with people, so I'm kind of by nature like not like I don't really play by the rules to begin with. So yeah, but having said that, I do think that it offers like a lot of tools on just how to be confident as a woman, and like how certain things that we do that we're not probably even aware of that we do as women that men don't do. And that's the other thing too. Like I do think this book is slightly, I mean, it was written in 2015, and I do think like we are moving a little bit away from this conversation of like women are this way, men are this way. I mean, obviously like there are still trends. Yes, like women apologize more in the workplace and men more frequently ask for raises and stuff like that. I think we've expanded the conversation a little bit more since this book was written, but I don't not recommend it as more of like a self-help book rather than like a criticism of the feminist ideas in it, which is kind of how I'm talking about it. But just like as a self-help book and as a woman reading it, it did make me think about like I definitely like approached meetings after I read this book differently and with more confidence, and I thought it was helpful to me in terms of my work and my business, and so for that reason I do recommend it. But just I had a little bit of like a critical eye reading it. I do really like the author. I enjoyed her voice and like what she brought to the table, so I did like it. Okay, the last book is Essentialism: The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McNone. This book Jean-Luc actually recommended to me. It's basically just about how in the workplace and other places we as a society value saying yes to everything and taking on a lot, and it's really how that's counterproductive, how we need to take more time to think, and then we can actually take less time to do things, and just like really just honing in on like what's actually important. And if you're trying to do too many things, you're actually not going to be productive. So it's just about kind of removing the noise from your life and just doing and caring about what is essential, because that is enough. And so it talks about that in terms of personal life, workplace life, etc. I think just in a time, again, like where I just feel like we have so much stuff thrown at us, it feels like the world is just endless. There's just endless opportunities. It can be really overwhelming. And so I feel like this kind of teaches you how to value doing less, doing things that are more productive for you, getting enough sleep, spending time with people that you care about, taking a look at your values and what's actually essential to you as a person, what's essential to your work as a person, and giving yourself time to think and play. There's this chapter I just read that was talking about this idea of play, and obviously as an actor that's super important to me, to find time in my week where I can just play, whatever that means, whether that means coloring or reading a play out loud with somebody, or going outside and playing basketball, you know, just having time for play in your life and letting that kind of be like a meditation. I thought that's really interesting. So yeah, if you find like you're somebody that is really overwhelmed at work and you feel like you're just doing so much and you're saying yes to so much and you just feel like your life isn't your own because you're just taking on so much, I feel like this is a really good book for you. So yeah, those are 8 self-help books to kickstart your new year. I recommend all of these books. I have some critiques, some small critiques of a few of them, but overall I do recommend all of them. I think that these 8 books give a kind of nice, holistic self-help journey. They definitely have really different perspectives and ways of looking at things, but I think after reading all of them, I feel like calmer and more in control of my life, if that makes sense. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I am really loving these book videos, so if you have any requests for me to do book-wise or anything else too, especially book-wise for this video, please let me know. I love making videos about books. I'm really passionate about reading and kind of sharing good books with people. Thanks so much. I hope you all have a fantastic new year, and if you have any other recommendations for self-help books for me to read, please drop them in the comments below. Have a good one. Bye.